Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK, and welcome back to my analysis of the Fruit of Grisaia anime adaptation. This is part 2, which means that there's a part 1. If you haven't seen part 1 or haven't gotten halfway through the anime, then I recommend watching the first part of my analysis, or at least up to episode 8 of the anime. In terms of where we are in the visual novel, we are going to be exploring Makina's story and Amane's story, which are post-com en route. In the first part of the analysis, we got introduced to our main characters, the school setting, and solve the issues of 3 of the 5 female characters in Yuji's potential harem. Yuji, our main protagonist, came to a school that now has a student population of 6, with the other students being female, of course, in order to live a normal student life. We know nothing about Yuji except for the fact that he seems capable of helping those around him in any crazy and unthinkable way. Yuji has helped Michiru, Sakaki, and Sachi respectively, and the other 2 characters, Makina and Amane, are the next on the list. They all trust him at this point, despite the fact that Yuji hasn't helped out the latter 2. Before I cover a bit as to how Yuji helped the first 3, I want to remind you all that spoilers will be thrown all around this video, as it is a full analysis of the events that occur in the show. Whenever I compare these events to what happens in the visual novel, you will be warned of that particular type of spoiler and be given a time code to skip to, just in case you want to jump into the visual novel yourself and see the big differences, and boy are there many. So after a couple or so episodes of some antics with the other students, Yuji began to help them after noticing some of their problems. He first helped Michiru, who suffers from multiple personality disorder and struggled to live after the loss of a close friend when she was younger. She's now able to keep on living after Yuji tested if she really wanted to give up or not. She still suffers from multiple personality disorder, and the anime-only eye color changes. Yuji then helps Sakaki break free from the chains that her family, or more specifically her father, locked her with. Her father expected her to be used as his puppet, and when that wasn't happening, he tried to strike fear into her. Her father is an overall idiot, but Yuji was able to work with Sakaki to free her from the situation that she was in. They faked her death in a ridiculous fashion, and Sakaki never looked back. This greatly differs from the events of the visual novel, and I touch a bit of that in the first part of this analysis. And finally, Yuji helps Sachi out by showing her that it's okay to be selfish, and that she doesn't have to be restrained by her PTSD and good girl thought process. Sachi planned to blow up the school due to a joking request by Michiru, and was stopped by her childhood friend Yuji. Once Yuji understood what occurred to Sachi after they no longer saw one another as children, he was able to let Sachi know that what happened to her parents was not her fault and that she is allowed to be selfish. Again, this greatly differs from the events of the visual novel, especially since you can't snap your fingers to get rid of PTSD, but I did talk about this in the first part of the analysis as well. So the majority of the female cast is taken care of. It's time to focus on the last 2 female characters, and in the process, we'll learn more about Yuji and some side characters. For example, we'll get a much clearer idea of Yuji's occupation, a brief look at Yuji's past, and we'll get to learn more about a family member of his that passed away in a terrible accident. After we cover those 2 stories, I'll go back and connect the OP of the anime to the events of the show, as it is nice to see how the OP incorporates many references to these events. Then I'll give my personal opinion of the adaptation of this part of the series. I have quite a bit to say, but it's best that we leave that to the end. Alrighty then, after months of waiting, let's get part 2 of my analysis of the Fruit of Grisaia anime adaptation underway. Irisu Makina, the very cheerful, colorful, energetic, vulgar, and sometimes extremely loud and annoying student at Mihama. When Yuji first met her, she was visibly fearful of him and shy around him in the first 2 episodes. It wasn't until he showed her that he wasn't a threat that she would open up and be herself around him, and also not be terrified of him. This is a problem that she possesses, and she has acted the same way around the other students when she first met them. Makina struggles with meeting people, but once she knows that they aren't threatening, she will gladly crawl out of her shell. The way that Makina acts around people she doesn't know isn't a far-fetched problem, as many people tend to keep themselves restrained around those they don't know well and show their true personality around people they do know. Makina's case is just taken a bit of an extreme level. Now, this all doesn't have too much to do with Makina's story in the anime, but it's worth bringing up to describe her character a bit more before we actually dive in. And now that you all are aware of her shy nature, let's dive into her story. Ah, We dove pretty far deep. Makina's story spans across episodes 8 and 9, and in the very beginning of episode 8, Makina requests that Yuji becomes her father. And no, not a make-believe family member like how she referred to him as a brother and how Amane referred to herself as a sister to Yuji. She legitimately wants Yuji to become her literal father. She even hands him a check for 7 million buckaroos. She was visibly desperate and worked up a lot of courage to request this of him. So, he accepts. He wants to be able to protect Makina and help her grow, as he can tell that something is up. He informs JB of this, and she shows concern due to the history of the Irisu family. I won't be going into great detail about how the Irisu family is or the political backing it has. I will comment on how corrupt the family is, but we'll save that for later. Basically, Makina's family is a problematic one, similarly to Sakaki's, but a lot more dangerous. So JB requests that Yuji treads carefully, especially since Makina's father was connected to JB's work and was killed in an accident a few years ago. Yuji requests to know more about that case, despite it being restricted information. Yuji wants to be a reliable character in Makina's life, as she requested, but he will need to know more about the Irisu family in order to comfortably do so. JB accepts Yuji's request for more information about Makina and her family. Thank you, JB. Alright, let's skip this part. It's not canon, I swear. While looking over what JB sent Yuji with the principal, who obviously knows more about Makina than Yuji at this point, we learn that Makina was involved in a kidnapping that led to the death of her father. Call it an accident or incident if you want, but based on the history that this family has in politics and its internal corruption, it's easy to see that something is amiss. We learned from this scene that Makina has a sister, which Yuji was taken aback from after assuming that Makina was an only child. After the kidnapping of Makina, she suffered brain damage, which meant that her sister was named the new family heir. Makina was literally cut off from major parts of her own family, and we'll see later how exactly that affected her life. The next scene shows Yuji's classmates outside, where Makina presents Yuji with a tree that she's attempting to grow. I hate to say it, but keep this damn plant in mind, because it unfortunately plays a part in the story later. Not much of a symbolic part, but more of a life and death part. It's pretty stupid. Summer vacation now arrives, and Yuji planned out a schedule full of training and healthy activities for Makina to do over their break. This includes running in the morning, learning how to fight by sparring with Yuji, doing homework on break, and yes, learning how to snipe. We learned in Sakaki's story that Yuji knows how to snipe based on his current occupation. He wants to share his knowledge with Makina. His ideology is that she can survive on her own in the real world if she can fight back against threats, which is partially true. A lot of this story in the visual novel involves Yuji acting as a dependable father figure, which we unfortunately only see in a few clips. I'll go over the differences between the show's direction and the visual novel's direction in a bit, but just be aware that their relationship as a family gets cemented pretty well in this story, which is nice to see. Another note is that Amane goes home to visit her family, which means that she's not going to play a big role in this story moving forward. I don't remember this happening in the visual novel, as she did play a bit of a role there. It's an interesting move, but it sets up the next part, where Yuji invites Makina to go pay respects to his deceased master. Yuji doesn't have a family, and we learned this from the first episode, but here he admits that the only person he could really call family after he lost his real family was his master, Asako. As Yuji and Makina venture up to her old cabin in the mountains, Yuji actually discusses a bit about his past, where he was taken in by an old friend of his dad's and saved by his master, as that guy was a bit on the evil side. This is why he's teaching Makina how to protect herself, as that's how he learned when he was younger and without a family. When they arrive at the cabin, we see that it's actually a cozy looking place. We also learn that JB has been around the cabin as well, and with a glance at a picture, we see that JB was close to him and his master as well. See, I told you guys JB was important. She's more than just his boss. As they visit his master's grave, Yuji and Makina say a few words, and Yuji is happy to introduce Makina as his daughter. She is thankful that Asako was able to help raise Yuji now that she knows that she played a major part in his young life. Without Asako, Yuji probably wouldn't be around, and we'll see exactly why later down the road. That night, Yuji reports to JB that they went to the cabin and everything was fine. He ended his report by telling JB goodnight using her first name Julia. He was happy and and felt at home, where JB also had a part in. He then looked at the stars, allowing himself to look back on his time at that cabin. The story is going really nice so far. Yep, no issues at all. Well, fuck. Okay, let's back up a bit. Back in town, Machina is returning to the dorms with some fresh-looking bread. The bread is important, but not right now, we'll get back to that. As she was walking back, she comes across a loudmouthed girl, and through monologue, we see that this is Machina's sister. In a quick flashback, we learn that her sister, Sarina, isn't aware of Machina's existence. Machina's mother wasn't much of a fan of Machina's father, so she quickly jumped ship to someone else. Machina never knew who this someone else was, but she somehow knew about her sister, which is a bit strange. She even frequently looked at her from afar, making sure she was doing well and was happy, but Sarina never knew of her sister's presence or who she was. As Machina walks past her sister, smiling as she imagines being able to introduce herself to her little sister, the car that she just got into with a couple of guards explodes upon igniting the engine. That shit was rigged to explode, and Sarina was the target. That, or someone really hated those guards or the car. Either works. Because Machina was so close to the explosion and also witnessed what the fuck just occurred, she needed rest and to get herself back together. Sakaki confirms the suspicion that Sarina was being targeted and that Machina was literally a bystander that caught up in the attack. Sarina was taken to the hospital and is actually still alive. Not sure how, but she is still kicking. Then Yuji helps Machina calm down by telling her that he won't die and he will protect her. After all, he did just have a flashback to when he accepted being her father. He cares for the damn girl. When he leaves Machina to rest, he gets called in to report before JB. We're finally going to see more of Yuji's occupation. Even so, we know at this point that he's no ordinary garbage man. As he reports in, we get introduced to JB's secretary at Kiata, who is fascinated by Yuji, or should I say, the infamous 9029. 9029 is Yuji's code number, and it's what he's referred to as in his line of work. We'll know more about the history of this number and why it's so important later down the road. Anyways, JB has a mission for Yuji, and he has to remind her that he doesn't kill people anymore. This is a big thing that you guys must understand. Yuji doesn't kill people in his line of work anymore, and also his line of work involves taking people out. Our questions are getting answered right here. Nice. JB is aware of the fact that Yuji doesn't kill anymore, but regardless, has him open the file before him. He must see what this assassination mission is, and once he opens it, we see that the target is Irisu Machina, his classmate, his daughter. Okay, so before we continue on and see what craziness unfolds after that bombshell dropped, I just wanted to say that this episode did an excellent job of showing growth between Yuji and Machina's relationship. Call it character development if you want, as we haven't really seen a lot of it, especially coming up to the obstacles and issues that arise at a point in these stories. Machina's story is a good example of why time needs to be set aside in order to let us get to see the characters interacting and showing growth before we hit a brick wall of plot. The previous stories would have benefited from an episode or so of pure character interaction, and now that we got that, I personally have a better appreciation for Machina thanks to Yuji's interactions with her. Okay, back to the story. The next episode begins with a flashback to the incident where Machina was kidnapped. We learned from this short flashback that this was all set up by Machina's own mother, and that she was having an affair which Machina's father was unaware of. Poor guy got cheated on and is now getting beat to death by some goons. The flashback was actually a dream that Machina was having, and when she awakes, we find her in an unrecognizable room with Yuji. Did I talk too much and miss some of the story earlier? Well, not really. The episode starts with one of those start in the middle and then go back to the beginning methods for some reason. After Yuji got briefed about his mission, which is to assassinate Machina, he was warned that if he didn't accept the mission, he'd be imprisoned and that the assassination would still be carried out one way or another. Yuji had no choice but to accept. And then we flash forward to see that he's actually on the run with Makina. JB and the company that Yuji just ran away from are now having to work to find those two. This company is dangerous, as you all could probably guess by now. We'll get a better explanation later on, but Yuji worked as an assassin and was trained as such. If someone needed to be dealt with, such as if they were a threat to the country or someone came up wanting somebody taken out, Yuji or someone else in the company would be called up. This underground national security sort of company has the means to track down one of their own dogs, and that is what they'll attempt to do against the big 9029 that many have heard about. Flashing back again, Yuji and Makina prepare to disappear for a while, telling their classmates that it's dangerous to stay where they're at. Apparently Amane is back in the picture, so I don't understand why there was even a scene of her leaving anyways. Before they depart, Sachi gives Makina the plant that she's attempting to grow. Like I said earlier, this thing is unfortunately gonna have importance. As they set off, JB speaks with Yuji, telling him that he's making a mistake and that the Irisu family, who obviously put the hit out on her, isn't going to let off easily. Yuji is informed a bit more of the Irisu family and Makina's current position. There's a side of the family that is against Makina, the corrupt side, and a side that is technically for her. Why is there a side against her? Well, it kinda has to do with Makina's father's side, but also an ability that she has. Makina is able to memorize things that she sees or reads, and she came across some very sensitive material that could really fuck over the corrupt side of the family. When she was hit with aphasia from the kidnapping incident, the Irisu family felt as if there was nothing more to worry about, but they got word that she was running around healthy as ever, and because the information she knows is that much of a threat, a hit was put out on her. Damn fictional abilities. We see in another short flashback that Makina's aphasia came from the shock of her father dying, and also being stuck around his rotting corpse. It wasn't a pretty sight, and it must have been a terrible experience to have been stuck there. However, we see that her father died with a smile on his face. She continues to wonder why that was the case, as she continues to have dreams about him. The actuality is that he died smiling because his daughter was able to remain alive, believing he saved her. He loved the damn girl. Yuji vows to protect Makina, just as her father attempted to do so, and so the chase begins. So now we're caught up with the present. The events that take place here involve Yuji and Makina hiding out, jumping around, and subduing any threats. At one point, their hideout at a motel is found out, but Yuji was able to set a non-lethal trap and get away with one of the vans the enemy was using. However, in their getaway, Makina left behind her plant, which made her quite upset. Yuji tells her that they can't go back and get it, as it's too risky. And yes, it is risky. Why would anyone go back to where they were almost killed? God fucking damn it. Back at Ichigaya, which is the company Yuji left behind, JB is given a report from someone by the name of the Underground Professor. To quote her secretary Kiara, the professor is the criminal super genius who's supposedly locked up in the basement of Ichigaya. The report states that the plant must be returned to the motel that was raided. We also get a glimpse of a machine down in the building with some Roman numerals on it. This company is full of mysteries, but I just want to know if there's actually a UFO landing pad on the roof. Makina stupidly goes back for the plant, and when she finds the plant, she also comes across a man aiming a gun at her. She's able to use techniques she learned from Yuji to fool and subdue the man. However, that wasn't the only person there. After she knocked the guy out, she was shot in the abdomen. So, as I said earlier, this plant's significance wasn't just symbolic, as it led to Makina getting fucking shot. Luckily, Yuji comes to the scene to rescue Makina. He knocks the goons out and prepares to carry Makina to the hospital. However, he's stopped by JB, telling him to put her down or else she will die. But that would mean he would have to leave Makina behind. He sees that as the best option to make sure that she stays alive at the moment. The next scene shows that Makina has been hospitalized and is still alive, albeit in a coma. We also see JB and Makina's mother. This is the first time we're seeing her mother outside inside of a flashback, at least here in the anime. Makina's mother wants her organs to be transplanted into Sarina so that she doesn't die and remains the Irisu's successor. JB is not much of a fan of this idea, but shit man, who would be? Makina's mother is made aware of the fact that Yuji is still out and about, which means JB did not take him in when she confronted him, so security is at an all-time high at her place of business. But that level of security doesn't stop Yuji, who sneaks in as a delivery man, takes a hostage, and kills Makina's mother. He does not hesitate, no talking at all, he just kills her. This is a problem, and I'll explain why in just a minute. The story is wrapped up rather quickly at this point. Because of JB's help to free Makina of the corruption that the Irisu family is trying to involve her in, Yuji was able to successfully help Makina, who awoke from her coma. The secrets of the Irisu's corruptions have been made public, 9029 is back to work and is cleared of his crimes, JB is still reliable as fuck, and Makina still has her stupid ass plant. The end. Sort of. Before I jump into the differences between the anime and visual novel, I need to state one big thing. Yuji is not a murderer anymore. He cannot kill people with ease like with what we just saw. Killing people is not something he is capable of anymore. There's a deep reason as to why this is so, and it has to do with his past. There's no way he would easily kill Makina's mother, and in all honesty, there was a much better way to go about it. So, let's dive into the visual novel for a bit. If you want to skip this part, that is completely fine. To start, Amane plays a bigger role in the first half of the story when Yuji is acting as a father figure to Makina back in Mihama. Amane plays a bit of a motherly role, despite already doing so for Makina before Yuji became her father. The two of them work to push Makina to jump out of her comfort zone, as she is quite shy. They see that she has an interest in baking bread, so the two of them help get her a job at a local bakery, and then it burns down when she begins getting attacked later in the story. Another important scene is when Yuji went to go meet Makina's mother before he was ordered to kill Makina. He wanted to stop things from getting too crazy, but unfortunately it didn't work. She seemed a little more understanding in the visual novel, but nonetheless, she wanted what was best for herself, not her own daughter. When Yuji and Makina were on the run, we see more development from them. Even before they left Mihama, after the chaos that was ensuing, they made love. Keep in mind that every route in the game pushes Yuji to the character that the story focuses on, so he became more of a partner to Makina rather than a father, which isn't a bad thing. They became closer while on the run, also making love and giving us the incredible line from Makina. Once Makina got shot from being pretty damn stupid by going back for that fucking plant, Yuji didn't turn into a murderous monster. While he was preparing to sneak into the Irisu building, he was fighting his inner demons, and we get an idea about why he refuses to kill. He reflects on his father, and how he was a murderer as well. He doesn't want to be like him. So when we get to the part where Yuji confronts Makina's mother, the player is left with a choice: kill the dumb bitch, or let her live. Letting her live is the right choice. Yuji unfortunately gets shot either way, but survives in the good ending, just without an arm. The two of them also talk things out a little bit before the choice comes up, which is honestly way better than what the anime gave us. Yuji is able to escape with Makina, and they go to Florida, yes, the United States type of Florida, while things die down. Yuji strangely dies if he kills Makina's mother, and Makina is left alone in Florida while pregnant. Not sure how that works, because if Yuji lives, they stay together and Makina is not pregnant. Weird shit, I know. And since Yuji has one less arm, Makina takes over as 9029. So as usual, we lose a lot of nice scenes that help the flow of the story and character development. But the anime stuck pretty close to the story's original plot and showed us actual growth before shit hit the fan. It started out great, but went downhill when they made Yuji out to be a killer. That's not who Yuji is, and it puts a bad taste in my mouth for the anime as we continue on. I'll give props to the anime version for doing well with this story compared to the last two, but as usual, time constraints really messed up the ending and some of the flow. Before we move on, I know we've been talking about Makina for like 9 pages of my script. I wanted to give my personal opinion about Makina's brain damage and what I brought up in the beginning of her story. I believe the aphasia that she was diagnosed with is unrelated to the shyness we see from her. Sure, that incident she was involved in really fucked her up and got her stuck in a hospital for a long period of her young life. But that doesn't make a person shy. She was betrayed by her own family, which probably makes it difficult for her to approach people. She most likely didn't have severe aphasia since she seemed quite healthy at Mihama, so her shyness is based on her past experiences. That's my opinion on the matter, at least. Okay, enough machina. Time for Angelic Howl. So months ago, in part 1 of my analysis for this show, I stated that Amane is the most important character of the 5 Yuji interacts with, and Sakaki being a close second. From what we've seen of Amane, she is probably the most normal, except for when she becomes a horny freak. The point is, she's the one that seems like she wouldn't have any problems to solve compared to the other 4. But oh boy, would that be a wrong assumption. Let's just jump straight into Amane's story. No more wasting time and extending this already very long script. Amane's story begins with Yuji getting driven back from a job, which at this point we know he works for some shady people and most likely shoots a big gun in order to complete his jobs. JB drove him back and decided to give him a big ol' kiss on the cheek for some odd reason. As Yuji watches JB drive off, he realizes that Sachi was watching by the school gate, so JB set him up. How fun. Yuji clears this up, or so he thought, after Sachi believed that she was going to be assaulted by him. So much for all that trust that we built up from her, huh? Yuji then goes back to his room where Amane was waiting with a prepared meal. In the visual novel, they had set up a time to meet like this, but since Yuji had a job, he came rather late. I'd like to say that this is a similar situation. As Yuji comes in for the meal that Amane prepared, avoiding her horny nature, he wonders why she is so set on him. She just states that it was love at first sight. And that's really all we have to fall on for that. As Yuji finishes his shower and sits to eat, Amane then gets an email from Sachi with an attachment showing him receiving a kiss on the cheek. This is enough to stir up some fire within Amane, but Yuji is able to avoid any confusion. We then transition into Yuji giving Amane a kiss. Her condition for her to forget about JB's little peck on Yuji's face is for him to give Amane a real kiss. Yuji is a straightforward guy, so he fucking goes for it. Afterwards, they discuss the feelings that Amane has for him and states that he's willing to accept them, despite all of this seeming very one-sided. Therefore, Yuji and Amane become boyfriend and girlfriend. Kinda. Yuji will accept Amane as his girlfriend, but Amane can't have Yuji as her boyfriend, or maybe it's the other way around. Either way, they're together. However, Yuji has some conditions. If Yuji were to die or disappear, Amane is not allowed to cry and has to forget about him within 1 year. Amane's counter condition is that Yuji has to state that he likes her, and he admits that while he doesn't know how to describe his feelings for her, he does actually like her. Amane has officially accomplished her goal, and then falls due to the amount of emotion that has killed the feeling in her legs. She then asks if he wants to have sex, but the damn girl is shaking all over. Yuji isn't the type of guy to put his hands on a shaking woman, come on now. Yuji then pries a bit as he wants to know the real reason behind Amane's feelings for him. It's not love at first sight, that shit only works in movies. So why did Amane try this hard to be with our juicy Yuji? Well, we're about to find out. The tone shifts, and Amane states,
私立滝園学園1年 A 組バスケ部所属風見和樹もちろん知ってるよね
知ってるも何も俺の姉だなぜ
Whoa. Where is all this coming from now? Amane reveals that she went to school with Yuji's late older sister and that they were on the basketball team together. However, on August 14th, 6 years prior to their present day, an incident occurred that took the lives of the majority of the basketball team. It was known as the Takizou Academy microbus fall accident, where the bus the team was on fell off a cliff and stranded everyone who survived the fall in an uninhabited forest. As Yuji wonders why she never told him that she was involved, Amane admits that she knew who Yuji was all along and was able to confirm that he was Kazuki's younger brother when they had met. If you go back to the first part of the analysis, I do point out Amane's reaction to hearing his name when they meet. It's a nice little addition that makes you wonder why she reacted that way, and it's nice to see it all connect in both the anime and visual novel. Amane then goes to grab a journal that documents the events of the incident, especially what happened on the day of the incident. Yuji dives into the journal, taking us with him. This is Angelic Howl, the very long painful, and emotional backstory that shows us what happened to Amane and her classmates. We also get to see Kazuki, who is the only family member of Yuji we'll be seeing this far. But before we actually dive into Amane's backstory, I wanted to point out the brief differences so far in the visual novel, as there aren't that many core differences this time around. The anime does a really good job with Amane's arc since it shows what's the most impactful, Angelic Howl. The visual novel shows a bit of a development in the relationship between Amane and Yuji, as their relationship starts in a very similar way. However, there is a lot of fucking, like, a lot. I'm pretty sure it happens 4 or 5 different times before we hear about Amane's past. It's some wild shit that I won't describe because I really want this video to be monetized if it isn't copyright claimed like the first part of the analysis. After all the fucking, Yuji and Amane go to the festival being held in town, and while there, the two of them fuck again, but after that, they overhear someone who seemed to recognize her, but not in a good way. Yuji was curious, so he pried a bit after they got back to the dorms. This is when Amane revealed she went to school with Kazuki and was a part of the same incident. However, it wasn't all just fucking and games that was going on during this visual novel only part, as there is deeper growth in their feelings for one another. One of the two people helping me out with this project, Full Metal, pointed out a scene where Yuji stopped what he was doing to help Amane out when she was cleaning the bathroom after thinking that something happened to her. It was actually a small misunderstanding, but it showed that he actually did care for her, but after that I'm sure there was more fucking that occurred. You see, there's not a lot of core differences, so let's jump into this backstory. Angelic Howl. In the visual novel, it took me quite a few hours to get through this backstory, listening to the same gloomy music tracks and witnessing the torture that these characters eventually go through. There is a lot of details in the visual novel that made its way into the anime. In a visual novel, you usually don't see much, but get a much better description. So in the anime, we're going to see a bit of the horrors that was described in the visual novel. It really makes you appreciate this part of the adaptation at the very least. And since there's a lot of details and I'm just highlighting parts of the show, I'm not going to analyze everything that occurs like I have been doing. There is a lot that goes on, and I've already gone over more than I probably needed to with Makina's story. So for the sake of my sanity and keeping the script length relatively short, I'm not going to analyze everything in this backstory. This part is definitely worth seeing for yourself, but don't do what I did and watch it in the middle of the night. That shit was difficult. The backstory begins with Amane and her basketball teammates coming back from a summer training camp. As they headed to school, the coach decided to take a shortcut for some stupid ass reason. This results in one of the tires of the bus popping and the coach unable to control the bus. And since he has lost control with a turn coming up, they go straight off a cliff. This is where the fall occurs in this whole incident. So remember kids, don't take shortcuts. Once Amane wakes up, she finds herself on Kazuki, leading to their first ever real conversation together. What a way to meet someone, huh? As they meet and Amane moves off of Kazuki, we can see Kazuki flinch in pain. Then again, they did just fall off a cliff, so it's safe to assume people are injured. It becomes more apparent that Kazuki is injured by the way she holds her arm when they exit the bus. After logically deciding who to save first from the bus, they help get everyone out. They help the team captain first since Kazuki dislikes her. There's some logic behind her reasoning, and she will continue to apply logic like this in multiple cases throughout this backstory. Once everyone is out of the bus, the anime gives us a rundown of the names and years of each student that made it out alive. Not everyone here is vitally important to the story, but our cast of colorful characters are Tamaki Hiroka, who has broken legs, Saya Kaneda, who has an injury on the side of her head, Yoshihiko Ochi, the coach, Mifuyu Sakurai, who has an injury in her abdomen, Ritsu Koide, the captain's puppet, Megumi Komori, who has a fucking dog with her for some reason, Minori Sakuma, Haruna Ibuki, Amane Suo, Kazuki Kazumi, and Chiaki Sakashida, the shitty captain. Again, not everyone is very important, and honestly, it's best to memorize them based on hair color since the cast of characters resembles the fucking rainbow of anime hair colors. Also, if I mispronounced anyone's name, I'm sorry, I really can't pronounce Japanese names. I've tried, but it's not easy. The captain takes the lead of this situation, as she'd rather not have Kazuki do it and take any credit credit, while the captain runs the risk of taking the blame if things went south. So the bitchy captain takes the lead and demands that Ritsu Koide, her puppet, sees to the injuries since she's the daughter of doctors, but she doesn't know anything in terms of the medical field or how to handle injuries. Kazuki and Amane decide to be each other's partners during this epidemic and volunteer to search the immediate area. While out doing a quick investigation, the two discover that there is no phone signal at all and that the compasses won't work due to the possibility of a meteor falling around the area. These scenes so far with Amane and Kazuki really show how intelligent Kazuki is compared to Amane, but she's still very caring for her peers. As we continue along with this dire backstory, we'll see more of how beneficial Kazuki is, as well as how close these two grow. Back at the crash site, we get a rundown of the current injuries as well as the nice bit of information that the only adult here is unconscious. Kazuki notices that no injuries have been treated yet, and it's understandable why, so she volunteers to take care of those who are injured. During the scenes where Kazuki treats everyone who is injured, we see more nice little interactions between Kazuki and Amane, cementing their quickly formed friendship. After everyone is treated, Kazuki admits that her arm is fractured due to how she braced for impact back when the bus was getting ready for its nosedive, so she'll be somewhat immobilized in that sense going forward. Plus, Amane feels indebted to Kazuki, so she'll definitely be by her side for a great majority of this situation. At this moment, the coach regains consciousness and is unsure of what happened. Kazuki gives her hypothesis that a sharp piece of metal came off the bed of the bus and cut down a tire. If there wasn't a turn coming up, it's very possible they'd all be okay, but unfortunately there was one. So now it's time to decide what to do. A few students have died due to the crash, they're in an uninhabited forest, or jungle, whichever sounds best, and multiple students have injuries, with 2 students not being able to move due to the severity of their injuries. So what do they decide to do? They decide to wait for rescue. The captain believes that's the best option, while Kazuki believes it's better to utilize their current strength and get out of this place. The captain tells her that she can go off on her own if she thinks that's the better option, but she doesn't. The point of arguing with the captain was so that she could not go back on her original decision. It feels kind of like a petty thing, but the captain will now most likely stick to the plan and not go with Kazuki's idea, despite it seeming better than sitting around. After looting off the dead and compiling what food and water there is, they distribute tents and food to pairs of people. Night has come, and Amane finds out about Kazuki's ability to photographically save and recall information, similar to the fictional ability that we learn Makina has, leading to her being a target in her story. The first day comes to an end with multiple girls crying and everyone questioning what would happen next. Little did they know that the first day would be the least painful in their time in this place that Amane refers to as the depths of hell. Then we get a nice new ending sequence for the next few episodes. Before we jump into episodes 11 and 12, I wanted to point out Kazuki's dependability. As I said earlier, she's very intelligent and has great ideas. Amane will slowly but surely look up to her as someone she requires in order to survive in this hellish place. And as I also said earlier, we'll see their friendship blossom. It's very nice development that the anime is able to capture from the lengthy backstory that the visual novel tells. Speaking of the visual novel, there are no major differences in this backstory except for many bits of detail and small events being cut out to save time. In this case, it doesn't negatively affect the story and makes it a lot more approachable. However, it's still an unnerving story that I struggled to get through in order to write this part of my script. As I said earlier, the visual novel has a lot more details, while the anime has the ability to help with visualizing just how horrible this situation is. The second day of the incident arrives, and Kazuki is already out and about. Amane finds one of her classmates, Minori Sakuma, attempting to get a signal on her phone by throwing her phone into the air. However, there is no luck in getting a signal due to where they're at, and AT&T's lack of signal strength across the world. Amane then goes into the forest looking for Kazuki. Apparently she was out using the forestry bathroom and finding some plants that looked edible enough. Amane does show that she was concerned for Kazuki, displaying more development of their relationship between one another. Back at the site, there were more attempts to get cell signal, but there is still no luck. Unfortunately, this is where everyone is going to be using their strength. On another note, Minori Sakuma tells Amane something that she should say to Kazuki in the case that they argued or fought. At least they're able to be playful as if nothing were wrong, for now. After Kazuki helps out the two girls that are most injured, Amane and Kazuki go out to get fresh water. During this scene, Kazuki begins to wonder if Amane didn't want to be partners during this situation. So Amane took this to be the chance to use what she was told earlier. She admitted that she liked Kazuki the most, which actually pushed the stern and dependable Kazuki to become flustered. As she continues to push her questions on her, she pushes Kazuki into the damn water. And then, they hear the sound of a helicopter. However, to no avail, they weren't able to get the attention of the passing copter, even as it flew by a second time. Hope was beginning to feel lost. On the third day, the coach carried out the corpses from the bus crash as they were beginning to rot. This made Amane question what would become of everyone as time went on. Later on that day, Amane asks Kazuki if she has a little brother, and we get an idea as to how young Yuji was, at least from Kazuki's perspective. As Amane reflects on her family, emotions truly begin to weigh down on her. This gives Kazuki more determination to make sure Amane gets home at some point. On the fourth day, we see that food rations are being reduced. On the fifth day, the rain trapped everyone in their tents. This probably led to an unproductive day, but I'm not sure if anything was really different in that regard. On the sixth day, we see that someone stole a carrot. To avoid chaos, Kazuki applies a puzzle that involves cutting the carrots up and arranging the pieces in a way that makes it look like that they're all accounted for. Chaos would have ensued if she didn't do this, and it was brought to everyone's attention that there was a thief afoot. Trust is a powerful tool, and in a situation like this, people need to trust one another in order to avoid chaos. Unfortunately, we never learn who stole the carrot. We can probably throw out some good guesses based upon events that happened later, but I don't believe we ever get a concrete answer. On the seventh day, we enter the medical tent, where Hiroka, the one with the broken legs, is refusing to eat. The captain is going about this all wrong and is acting like her normal bitchy self, so Kazuki volunteers to help Hiroka out. The girl needs to eat, but she's refusing to. Why? Well, she can't move. And when you drink water or eat food, yeah, you get where I'm going with this. There's more disturbing details about this sort of case in the visual novel, but just seeing the girl in an embarrassed state because she's having to soil herself is definitely a punch in the gut. Then we get to this weird scene afterwards where Amane feels jealous about Kazuki. It's interesting, I guess. On the 8th day, we learn that the coach will be venturing out with quite a bit of supplies in order to find help. Why is he doing this now and not back in the beginning of all this? Who the hell knows? We've barely seen much of the guy, so you can assume that he's not all that useful. On the 9th day, the coach sets off on this lovely rainy day. We also get more confirmation after listening to the captain bitching that Amane will absolutely stick with Kazuki. On the 10th day, the rain continued to fall, and Amane seems to be losing her mind a little since she was reading aloud while she was writing in her journal, completely oblivious to that fact. Later that day, we come to a very disturbing scene showing maggots roaming around Mifuyu Sakurai's abdomen wound. This is where the anime succeeds in making the viewers feel disturbed, which is a good thing, since nothing about this situation is great, and it really is only going to get worse. Hiroka is also beginning to lose hope and states that she wants to die at this point. On the 11th day, the craziness is beginning to affect the girls, and the fucking dog that was brought along is beginning to die. There is also still no word about their coach's progress. On the 12th day, the dog kicked the bucket, and since everyone is very malnourished at this point, they all decided to eat the dog. The owner, Megumi Komori, was understandably unhappy about all this. The girls enjoyed their small meal, except for Komori, as these past few days have begun to physically affect them. Now, this is where shit begins to hit the fan. On the 13th day, multiple people are coming towards their absolute limits. Some are poisoned, others are losing their minds, and one or two are practically already gone at this point. The anime shows that these characters didn't do much in terms of using their energy in order to survive, but in all honesty, they did all they could while staying in the general vicinity. Coming up to this point, the visual novel shows many activities that were cut for time in the anime. These activities show their attempts at staying alive while staying in one spot, hoping for rescue. rescue, but after 2 weeks, no sign of rescue has been seen. On the 14th day, Kazuki tells Amane the name of her younger brother. She tells her that she'd love to introduce Yuji to Amane. Immediately after, the coach returns to the site. He did not find his way out of the forest, and hope is becoming very close to lost. That evening, we got our first death among those who survived the crash. Hiroka, who had 2 broken legs, was not responsive the previous day and was wishing for death a few days prior. A death shouldn't be much of a surprise. We knew before the backstory began that Amane was the only survivor. All that was unknown was when and how everyone would kick the bucket. On the 15th day, we got 2 more deaths. Sakurai, who had the wound on her abdomen, died of blood poisoning, and Komori, who had the dog with her, died from suicide. And while we didn't see any more deaths that day, we saw just how messed up everyone was becoming. Kaneda was eating the damn maggots from her wound that she had on her head. Amane looked overly depressed and weak, and many were expecting death at any point. But then the bitchy captain came with news that the coach caught and cooked a deer for all to eat. And of course, everyone jumped onto this, except for Kazuki. And since she passed on it, so did Amane. She didn't want to go against Kazuki's opinions, despite how difficult it may have been. And then, the big night came. Kazuki wakes Amane up, telling her that it's time to escape. She shows her that the bitchy captain and the coach are walking into the forest. Amane questions why they're escaping alone instead of bringing the others along. However, all Kazuki tells her is that ogres cannot be saved. Kazuki leads her somewhere before they attempt to get out of this place. She says it'll explain everything. They kneel behind some bushes and see something very horrific. The coach and the captain are having some freaky forest sex. There is so much that is wrong with this scene, and for obvious reasons. The coach looks like a damn wild animal here as well, but that's not all. As the moonlight shines in, Amane is able to see pieces of a human corpse and their clothes lying on the ground. You can see what used to be Komori's hand, with her dog's collar worn around the wrist. This shocking scene causes Amane to fall back and alert themselves to the 2 monsters, so it's time to get the fuck out of here. The coach begins his chase after the 2, showing that this man has completely lost his mind and has truly turned into a monster. They are able to stop the coach from chasing them, however they need to get out of here before they are killed. They run into Sakuma, who apparently knew about the captain and the coach. It seems as if she has lost her mind as well, as Kazuki reiterates that everyone here is no longer human and are all ogres. They continue to run away as they are pursued by their classmates. It's almost like a damn zombie chase scene, huh? It really shows just how far gone their classmates are. Soon, Amane begins to lose the energy to run away, so she tells Kazuki to leave her behind. However, Kazuki instead volunteers to lure the monsters away, allowing Amane to escape with these. She gives her a backpack full of food and a note that'll help her get out of this forest. She also tells her that they will meet again one day. Amane begins to run away, being told not to turn back. But Amane, being the dumb bitch that she can be, did glance back, showing us that Kazuki was smiling, despite being captured by the ogres. Amane turns away and continues to run, trusting in what Kazuki told her for the final time. Multiple days then pass as Amane attempts to get out of this hell. She gets to the point where she doesn't know how many days had gone past since that night. As she continues to mindlessly walk along, she sees hallucinations of her classmates as well as Kazuki. She chases after the hallucinations and then hears the sound of a vehicle. She goes towards the direction of the sound and comes across a road. On the other side of the road is a large lettuce farm in which she dives right into. Amane has officially made it out of that hell. But the story doesn't end there. Amane was the only survivor from all this. The media never shared who the only one to be rescued was, but those around her, such as classmates, families of those affected, etc., know who she is. Many began to blame her and accuse her, wondering why she was the only one to make it out of there. This correlates with an event that led us to the backstory in the visual novel spoilers section, as to this day, there are some out there that still blame her. She also has been struck with frequent nightmares involving those left behind. What makes all of this worse is that all of the bodies were apparently cut up at the site. Well, besides the bodies that were eaten. So many began to accuse Amane of cutting up the bodies and making a break for it. She believes this is all her punishment for being the lone survivor. She wouldn't feel at ease for leaving everyone behind, so she searched for someone to punish her, and that became Yuji. So yeah, all that lovey-dovey shit was basically her way of trying to get Yuji to punish her, which also correlates with the events of the visual novel. So why did she choose Yuji over everyone else? Well, she feels responsible for the death of his sister, so she tried her hardest to become Yuji's partner, but now that the truth is out, she wants him to kill her, but he won't. He tells her that as a form of punishment, she is to remain at his side for the entirety of her life and actually enjoy living, or at least that's the gist of it. There's more to it in the visual novel, but you get the idea. She can keep on living and stand at his side. Yuji has a general idea of what's going on within her, so he believes that by acting as someone who is punishing her, she'll slowly begin to forgive herself. Afterwards, Yuji wonders about the mutilation that occurred there and the fact that Kazuki's head was missing. This sparks a memory within Amane, the scene with the carrots in which they were cut up and sorted in order to make it look like there was another one. Could this have been done with human bodies? Probably not, but it sparks the idea that Kazuki could still be alive. Amane retrieves the note Kazuki gave to her with instructions of getting out of that forest. There was a spot that was marked that had extra rations, as Kazuki had thought out different scenarios pretty well. That's another thing that isn't touched up about Kazuki. We've seen how dependable and smart she is, but here's another thing. She's incredibly great at predicting the future based on past and present events. She had a feeling Amane would get off that mountain, but prepared for the case where she wasn't able to. Thus, this spot was marked with extras. Amane feels that if there was a hint about her possible survival, it'll be at this spot. She is filled with determination and is willing to go back there with Yuji's assistance. I'm very surprised that she's willing to go back to that hellish place so easily, but hey, whatever. The next day, or a few days later, who knows, the two take what I believe is the school's maintenance truck and head into town. Before they head to the site, she wanted to get flowers and incense to pay her respects at the site. As Yuji waits, a man approaches him. The man knew Yuji's name and introduced himself as Sakashida, also stating that he's a big fan of Amane's. Yuji wonders who this man is, and he states that he used to manage an IT company, but lost his life's purpose. In all honesty, despite knowing Yuji's name, the man doesn't seem all that suspicious. The visual novel shows just how much older men love Amane, for obvious reasons, so at first glance, the man doesn't seem too suspicious, until he states that there was something left he needed to do, while the microphone is shoved right in his face and still smiling. The man feels like he's boring Yuji, so he dips out. Then Amane heads over, wondering who he was talking to. Yuji states that he was giving him the creeps, and understandably so. That shit was random. And so, they head towards the site of the incident. We now arrive at the final episode of the Fruit of Grisaia's anime adaptation. This serves as a conclusion of Amane's story as well, with a neat anime original twist that involves the other characters. Yuji and Amane arrive at the designated spot with relative ease, especially since people have created a trail up to the crash site. They dig up what Kazuki stashed and find a letter addressed to Amane. The letter lets Amane know that everyone died of disease since they ate Hiroka, who wasn't the healthiest of the bunch to eat in the first place. Amane and Kazuki didn't die because they didn't eat the meat they were offered. That obviously wasn't deer meat, and we can tell that by now. The letter also involves Kazuki requesting to find her younger brother Yuji and look after him. We get another perspective on how Kazuki saw Yuji when they were younger and trusts Amane enough to want her to be there for him. She ends the letter by stating that she'd like to meet her again one day, insinuating the possibility that she survived. But how? Yuji truly believes that the letter was written by Kazuki, but he does not know if she truly is alive. They then go pay their respects to the dead. Amane was able to handle a lot of this with ease thanks to Yuji being there for her. Amane is slowly finding the strength she needs to push forward and to not let the past affect her. On the memorial, Yuji notices a name, the name of the bitchy captain that betrayed everyone. Now as they go back to the truck to go back to the school, we get the divergence from the visual novel. This all goes into a bit bit of an anime-only situation that I'm completely fine with. It ties together everything that we've seen thus far and wraps up Amane's story without any bad outcomes. Amane receives a call from Makina, but it isn't Makina. It's a voice that she's never heard before, but a voice Yuji has heard just once before. He receives a call from Sachi, who secretly called him to allow him to listen in on the sudden call. Sakashida, the man who came up to Yuji earlier that day, has created a hostage situation with the 4 other girls at the school, demanding that Amane come to their rescue. This man is the father of that bitchy captain, and he blames Amane for the death of her daughter. Now you're probably wondering how he rounded up the girls and made them his hostages. Well, he simply walked into the dorms with a shotgun and told them to get changed into their uniforms for some reason. Not sure why things went in that direction, but whatever. Amane and Yuji begin rushing back to the school, and Yuji contacts JB requesting assistance. The police would have been a good group to call, but then Sakaki's father would be aware of the fact that she's alive. So the sketchy underground force of Ichigaya come to help out. Soldiers swarm the school, and Sakashida tries to snipe with his shotgun. Yeah, this shit is whack. Yuji and Amane eventually arrive without Sakashida being aware yet, and Amane begins to understand Yuji's work background a little bit more, as some of the others have as well. They plan out where everyone is being held in the school, and Yuji wants to snipe them out. However, there aren't any tall buildings or structures anywhere except for a lighthouse that doesn't have a clear shot of the classroom they're being held in. Now this lighthouse is pretty far away, but it's Yuji's only choice to get a hit on the guy and allow the soldiers to run in. The only optimal clear shot is a restroom, but one of the urinals needs to be taken out. He uses Morse code with Makina, telling her what needs to be done. She quickly comes up with a quick and sketchy plan that technically works out, so now if the man wants to go pee, he has to use the urinal with the clear shot from Yuji's side. It's at this time that Amane decides to go in herself, which is what Sakashida has been waiting for. She brings up water to try and push the crazy SOB to use the restroom. When she arrives at the classroom, she allows herself to get tied up after changing into her uniform, which I still don't get. Why is he so insistent on them being in uniform? Does it matter at this point? Well anyways, Amane asks the man why he's doing this and why he wanted to talk with her in the first place. He believes it's unfair that his daughter had to die so that Amane can live a happy life with new friends and even a boyfriend. He's like the others that talked about her right after she was rescued, blaming her for the deaths of the students instead of being happy that at least one person would be able to live on. It's perfectly fine for this man to feel upset about the death of his daughter, but Amane didn't sacrifice anyone in order to survive, so his reasoning behind doing this is extremely flawed. Sakashida gives Amane a choice to see if she is regretful, which yes, she absolutely is from what we've seen. Amane can allow the man to shoot her and let the others go, or they can all die so that she can be let go. He wants to see if she would sacrifice her friends again, but like I said, she didn't sacrifice anyone in the first place, and she herself is coming to that realization by allowing herself to be the one he kills. So the psycho hits her a few times and gets horny. He drags her along to the bathroom to take a piss before having a go at Amane. Now this entire time, Yuji has been in a call with Sachi's cell phone. If you recall, she called him when Amane was called and left her phone on, but since phones have awful batteries, the phone died right before Amane was dragged to Sakashida. So Yuji has no idea if they're still in the classroom or if the man is going to appear where he needs to be. But luckily, he does appear in the designated spot, allowing Yuji to take the very risky and low probability shot at Sakashida. We see the bullet strike the wall in front of Sakashida, allowing us and him to realize that he's been wounded. Amane takes this chance to take his gun and help her friends. Yuji informs JB that the shot was successful so that the soldiers can move in. So all's well that ends well. Amane was able to face a part of her past and realize that she wasn't to blame by being able to overcome this crazy son of a bitch. Yuji was able to also test his skills of sniping to see if he was approaching his master's ability. This anime adaptation definitely loves its crazy on-campus moments, huh? But with that, we finish Amane's story. But since that was all anime original, what occurred in the visual novel? Well, it's all very similar. Sakashida actually goes to the site of the incident to kill Amane directly, and the two of them have to fight him off. In the bad ending, Amane is able to read the letter that they found from Kazuki, but the two of them die trying to fight off Sakashida.
Was that the bite of 87?
In the good ending, they don't get the opportunity to read the letter and they survive. Plus we get time skips showing us the two of them as they grow older and even have a family. There's a nice conversation that Amane has with her granddaughter as well, which tells her that she has absolutely moved on from her horrific past. The final episode of the show concludes with a very different scene. We see what seems to be a ship of terrorists causing some mayhem on the high seas with a rocket launcher. It's all very random, but it'll all make sense in the next two parts of the series, which are the Labyrinth of Grisaia and the Eden of Grisaia. The visual novel never had a sneak preview like this since there was never an interconnected route. All characters had their own timeline of events, which means the sequels follow a branch that relies on the idea of Yuji helping everyone, just like what we saw here in the Fruit of Grisaia's anime adaptation. And that's it. That is the adaptation of this part of the series. But like I said just a minute ago, we have two more parts to cover. But before we wrap up this analysis, I wanted to take a moment to look at the OP, as well as give my thoughts on the show. While writing this script, I became very hesitant for this part since I've already written a fucking novel. The opening theme is Rakuen no Tsubasa, or Wing of Paradise in English, and is sung by Mauen Kurosaki. It's a really great song that sticks to the general musical theme of the series. The OP itself has a lot of nods to events that occur with each character. Amane is playing basketball and feeling depressed while she imagines her dead classmates running around behind her. Sachi is on a swing set reminiscing about her past with Yuji and what occurred in her past. Makina is seen with a bunch of bread, which she loved making in the visual novel, while looking at a father hug his daughter. Michiru's cat runs towards her and jumps on her as she gleefully accepts the cat's playfulness. And finally, Sakaki is running around in an industrial setting with her young self being shown to be trapped in a bird cage. The OP seems to really show a lot of Sakaki, which would make you think that she has a lot of importance in this show, but she actually doesn't. I said this in the first part of the analysis, but in my opinion, Amane is the most important of the bunch, with Sakaki being a good second. Her background involves the school for misfits, yet we only get one episode to explain her background and tell her story. It's a bit misleading for their huge amount of inclusions of Sakaki in this OP. Other than that, it's really good. We also see all the supporting characters as well as our big handsome man. It definitely could have been a lot worse, but luckily they were creative with this OP and pulled off something really nice that those who read the visual novel can also really enjoy. So what did I think of the anime? This was my second time watching it, with my first time being in 2016. That was also my first experience of the stories that were adapted from the visual novel, so I wasn't completely aware of the butchery until I got to those points in the visual novel. I've said it multiple times in this analysis, but there was a huge lack of character and relationship development with the characters. Plus, the time constraints resulted in stories being told in a much more unsatisfying way, whether they were completely altered or just shortened. But does that make this a bad show? In my opinion, no. I still enjoyed what was presented. I said in the first part of this analysis that I liked this show, but I didn't state how else I felt about it. The show was not great because of the amount of episodes and time each section was allotted. Everything else was completely fine. Sure, the animation was stiff at times and CGI was used during some wacky moments, but it was still very watchable and I enjoyed my 2 watches of the show. If I had to give the Fruit of Grisaia ratings, the anime would get a 6 out of 10 and the visual novel would get a solid 9. The anime could have been so much worse, but it was rather satisfactory. Many shows have gotten way poorer treatments when being adapted from the original medium, so this is honestly not a bad show, but it's also not a good one. But if I had to say something else about the show, it definitely redeemed itself with Amane's backstory, Angelic Howl. As I said before, the show did a good job of showing us what the visual novel did, which is something valuable to get out of an adaptation like this. The first time I watched through that section of the show, it was nighttime and I felt very disturbed watching it. The anime absolutely accomplished its goal in relaying the sense to me, the viewer, just like the visual novel was able to when I read through it for multiple hours in my life. While the first episode is a favorite of mine in the show, episodes 10 through 12 are not too far behind. These, in my opinion, are the most excellent of the adaptation. Anyways guys, that's gonna do it for the Fruit of Grisaia Anime Analysis. Next up, I'll be analyzing the 47 or so minute episode of The Labyrinth of Grisaia. It's a little weird how they set up the next part in these adaptations, but whatever. I'll figure out how I'm going to analyze it when that time comes. But for now, I want to thank all of you for watching. After 22 pages of script writing and however long it's going to take for me to record my audio and edit all of this, I finally got it out to you guys. I got a lot of great constructive feedback in the first part, so I tried my best to make this part even better, especially since I got that good mic quality now. I hope to be able to keep doing little projects like these, as it's definitely a bit of fresh air here on the channel. Before we end the video, however, I do want to thank my friends Full Metal and One Fime for helping out again. It's nice having a couple pairs of helping hands for a project like this. I'd also like to thank my patrons Ashton Lambert and JW Player 0. The support on Patreon is extremely welcomed, as well as the support from everyone who tuned in to this analysis. If you enjoyed the video, please share it around. I hope that it will spark interest in someone to check out the series themselves, whichever medium they choose. Thank you all for watching, and for the support with this project so far. I'll see you all in the Labyrinth of Grisaia Anime Analysis.